Everybody, this is DID Hatchery. We have been gone for a while, and that's what this video is about, to say hi again and to explain where we've been and to talk about a few topics of things that have happened over the last few months. We've missed you guys. Welcome back. Sorry it's been so long. We've had to be very delicate about our filming. We've had to be delicate about a lot of things lately. A lot of things have changed because certain things have happened that have really blown my mind and changed my perspective on my alters. And, you know, I think a lot of people think that when you have DID, you naturally know who your alters are, or you get along with them, or you're like a family or a group of friends. And my system is not like that at all. I have a lot of very mysterious parts to my system that I have no clue about, which I learned recently. Like, I learned it like a month ago at this point. But I needed to be like very careful about how I do things. And you might see things, my videos might be the same, they might be different, I'm not sure. But so what happened? That's the question. What happened? Okay. So I hadn't been feeling well for months. I'd been in a very bad depressive episode. And then I just finally, you know, after the election and the bad news of the election, I broke. And I was just like, you know what? I better go to the hospital before I don't have access to hospitals anymore. Like, honestly, that's how I feel any minute. Like, I just don't even know what's going to happen. But so I admitted myself, I think. I'm trying to remember. I know I went voluntarily. Yeah, no, I know what I did. Okay. I'm very traumatized by hospitals, so it's very hard for me to go unless I know exactly where I'm going, unless I've researched where I'm going. And you never know where you're gonna go because you have to go through the ER, and then it's a lottery and you could end up anywhere. So what I did, so I wouldn't end up in the ER lottery, is I got myself admitted into their partial hospitalization program, which would bump me up to the priority list, on the priority list for the hospital. So I went to that for like a couple of days, and then I was like, listen, I really need to go to the hospital. And so they let me go to the hospital. And then I was there for 2 weeks. And when I was there, I decided to get electroconvulsive therapy because the depression was very bad. And I had had electroconvulsive therapy 3 times before. My first series was 7. It was unilateral, which doesn't work as well for me. And then the second 2 series were 12 and 12 ECT sessions, and it was bilateral. Now, all of those series of ECT, sorry, might be a little distracted or dissociated or whatever. Those series of ECT were before I knew I had DID, all 3 of them. This would have been the first time I've ever had electroconvulsive therapy after I've known about my DID. And I firmly believe there are at least two phases to DID. The first phase is you don't know you have it. And when you don't know you have it, like it's an entirely different disorder when you don't know you have it. I can tell you, I didn't experience 90% of what I experience now. Because I just had no memory for it. And then there's the processing phase, which is what I'm in now. And so the first 3 series I was in the first phase. I was not processing anything. I was still in survival mode. So my memory, I had no memory of my actual disorder. And that affects the side effects of ECT, by the way. That has a big impact on how electroconvulsive therapy affects you. And so this was the first time I had it after I was aware of my DID with my alters, and I really think people need to study DID and electroconvulsive therapy. I'm making this video as like a document, so maybe if anybody chooses to get in the future, they'll be forewarned. So I ended up only having a 5 series this time, which is 6 is the minimum, but I bolted. Okay, basically, I bolted. I chose to have the ECT. I was very scared because I've had issues with anesthesia in the past. But it was very nerve-wracking because, you know, one time I woke up under anesthesia and it was awful. It was the most terrifying thing. But they did a good job. I never woke up. But what happened was, so I was in the hospital. I was, you know, I didn't want to get my fifth session. I felt things were going strangely internally. Okay. I felt I needed to just escape. Okay. And so I went to tell them that I didn't want to do the 5th session. And they're like, well, you know, the ECT doctor, she just wants to see you. So just like go down to the ECT area clinic with the staff member and go talk to the ECT doctor. And so I was telling her, you know, I really don't want to do another series right now. There's some strange stuff going on internally, and I would just not like to do that. And then she did something that made it impossible for me to get another series, another session. I don't know why this happens to me, but I've had stuff like this happen to me throughout my entire life in the mental health care system. But basically she threatened me. And I'm sorry, I am way too traumatized to take your threats and then follow along with everything you're saying. So it was so strange. Okay, so I was they tricked me. They tricked me. And this is not the first time I've been tricked in a freaking hospital. Okay. But mind you, if you need to go to a psych hospital, you should go to a psych hospital. That's very important to keep yourself safe. And this does not happen often. It does not happen to most people, okay? So it would be very rare that this could possibly happen. Anyway, so this whole thing where they told me to come down to the like ECT area where they actually perform it and just talk to the doctor for a minute and just tell them how you're feeling. Well, that turned in, like, I was actually in the actual ECT room, which I thought was bizarre, okay? She was just like, I was like, you know, I don't think I would like to have the 5th one. I'm feeling a little strange. And she's like, well, you know, you really should. And, you know, I would have to, you know, discharge you AMA, which means I'd have to pay for everything. And so it was a threat, okay? And then, so she's like, so you might want to just do this last one and, you know, so that, I don't know. I'm a dissociated person, okay? Literally everything I experience is on a 5 to 10 second delay, okay? If somebody says something to me like, the sky is blue, I'll be there like, and then I'll walk away and I'll be like, what did they say? Oh, they said the sky was blue. Like, that's how I am, okay? So I was in that delay or whatever. And so I just sort of went, okay. And I let them do the 5th session, which, whatever, you know, I already had 4. I'm not saying, you know, I don't think ECT is bad. I think ECT is extremely helpful for depression. I think it needs to be studied more when it comes to people in the 2nd phase of DID, okay? So I ended up having the 5th one, and then I was like discharged the following day, and then I was supposed to come back a day later, and I did not come back, and I just escaped. I just fled, okay? And so what I started noticing about my experience with ECT and alters and DID and association was I had this strange sort of blending, okay? But I don't know how many alters I was blended with. I felt strange. I was co-conscious because I was there, but my interactions with the world, everything just felt strange, looked strange. The way my eyes felt, they felt strange. Like, they just felt like very intense on my face, okay? I don't know. It just, everything was off. And there was definitely another part there that I had never experienced and consciously. And so what ended up happening was I had felt very strange for like a week after. My eyes felt weird, like they were extremely like intense, like the muscles around my eyes felt weird, like I couldn't stop staring at things intensely. And I think that was the other part. And and just my feelings were odd, and it was not a good thing, okay? And what happened is that led to a massive, the worst flashback of my life. It was a flashback that changed my perspective on my history. It changed my perspective on my child alters and their experience with life. It changed my perspective on alters in general, okay? Because just because you have DID doesn't mean you treat your alters well all the time. I have a long history of holding things in. I had to hold things in my life constantly. If I made a face at home, it was over. Okay, like I usually don't talk about that. But I have a long history of holding everything in for safety. And so that has translated into holding my alters in, not letting them do things to express themselves, to make themselves feel better. And plus I have alters, like I have like alters that need to do art expression, okay? And they need it to heal. And then I have other alters that don't want to let them have that. They're like, no, like they're angry for some reason at the ones who want to express themselves. And so it's just a real mess trying to get everything working. Okay, where was I? Okay, I'm sorry. This might be a very dissociated video. Oh, I lost track. Okay, no. So I had the worst flashback I've ever had. And I learned something about my history through it. And I learned that I had to be a lot more open with my alters. I had to take them a lot more seriously. By seriously, I don't mean, I wasn't mean to my parts. I was dismissive, you know? I was dismissive. Because even I, at this late stage, still sometimes don't view my alters as three-dimensional, like their own thing. They've got their own stuff, you know? And this flashback taught me not only do they have their own stuff, they have something very severe to recover from. And so I changed my behavior towards my children, my child parts, and other alters. So far, I've been working with the child parts, trying to, okay, I'll give you an example of how it used to be. How it used to be was like, I would be sitting on the couch, like watching TV in freeze mode. I'm like almost always in freeze mode. Then maybe I would get a vague urge to color. And that's always the children. I'd get like a vague urge to color. And then some other urge would come to slap it down. No, like no moving. And so that's sort of how it was for a very long time. But after that flashback, something happened in that flashback. I met a new part, and this part is in some of the deepest, darkest recesses of my inner world. I know, I hate talking about inner world stuff because it makes this disorder seem fantastical. It's just that you have a child's mind when you have this disorder started, and whatever your brain has to do to survive, it does. Even if it has to imagine all kinds of stuff. And so I had this part that was in this part of my inner world. I have this electric forest, and then beyond the electric forest is a black forest. Just pure darkness that I never could see into. Well, this altar came from the black forest, and I assume from what happened that this is where my darkest traumas lie, is in this black forest. And so this part, sorry if I dissociate, I'm trying to keep it together. Okay, so this part, the experience I had with this flashback, I was on the phone with a friend of mine. Well, I called them after everything started feeling weird. What ended up happening is like I started to become afraid of the dark. That's what happens. I just started to become intensely afraid of the dark, and the dark stopped looking like the dark. The dark started to look like its own entity, like it was going to get me, like it had its own volition. And I called my friend because I was very scared of the dark. And she got to hear the whole flashback basically because she was trying to comfort me through it, and I really appreciate her for that. And so the experience I had was unlike any experience I've ever had so far with DID. This is the first time this ever happened. I saw this altar, this new altar, not new, but new to me altar. And this basically internally, we were physically, he had a memory in his hands, and it was like he was pushing it through into my consciousness, forcing it, and I was forcing it away. I was saying, like, I remember the flashback because I was experiencing it from two perspectives. I was experiencing it from the child perspective, and I was experiencing it just from random, like someone from the side watching. And so in it, I just kept saying, no, 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 I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to, like, I did not want to know this, okay? Like, I would have done anything not to know this, okay? And I was pushing back, like, no, no, no. And then suddenly I had one of those full-on three-dimensional flashbacks where you have everything, the visual, the audio, the all of it, and the reliving of it as a child, as a little toddler. And not on my radar, none of this. I'm not going to talk about what it is, but it was, none of it was on my radar at all. Not even a little. I mean, I thought I knew a lot about my trauma. I really did. I thought I knew a lot about it. Like in an outline sense, like, okay, I know I lived at this house and this happened while I was at this house. I know I lived at that house at this age and this kind of stuff happened around this age. But this memory, no clue, had no idea, was not aware at all. And so he pushed that memory into my consciousness. I had this massive flashback, which was horrifying. The most terrifying thing I have experienced in decades, probably. I even asked AI why flashbacks are so terrifying, and they're like, because you're experiencing it for the first time because you were dissociated originally. And I was like, whoa, okay. No wonder it's so terrifying. And so, but at the same time, when the flashback was over, just like the last time I had something, it felt like I had access suddenly. I had access to something a little more in me after this flashback. It's like somebody cracked open the door just this much, right? To my artistic self. Because I don't know if people know this, I used to be a poet, a professional poet. I haven't written in over a decade. Because I haven't been the right part. You know, my writing is very tied to emotions deep down. And so I've got a little bit, like just a little bit of access to my artistic self. And I'm very happy about that, but that's what came through, you know, I had the flashback, the new knowledge, all these emotions, plus this one good thing, this new access. So it's like something integrated during that flashback, as well as the flashback happening. But I also think I would not have had this flashback, the severity of it, had I not had ECT. I feel like it brought alters together, like closer together, that were very far away from each other. I feel like if I didn't have ECT, this flashback would have never happened, and I never would have gotten access to my artistic self this little bit. So it's good and bad. And so what I'm saying is, I don't know if this is good or bad. I'm saying that ECT can bring parts closer that don't have any clue about each other, and potentially invoke a little bit of healing, but through suffering, through like flashbacks that maybe you're not ready for. Because I could tell you now, I was not ready for this flashback. I was not ready, okay? And it took weeks after the flashback for me to start to begin to feel even remotely okay and normal again. And that's why everything about trying to make a video has been very delicate. Like everything's been delicate, because around the time that you get ECT, 6 months, you have confusion and memory issues. And I was confused. I was having really bad memory issues, which is hard to tell when you have DID, because you have memory issues anyway. But I don't know. I think electroconvulsive therapy needs to be approached more safely with people with DID. I do not suggest having outpatient electroconvulsive therapy when you have DID, okay? Because that's often what happens. You start inpatient, then you continue outpatient. I do not suggest that. I think people with DID maybe need to be watched a little longer, be kept in a safe environment a little longer, because you might experience things that you're not ready for. You're not. I know. And so in a sense, it's a good thing because it broke some sort of barrier in me. I met a new part that made me, and I got a memory. Like this flashback, this memory has been trying to be born in me for decades, and I know this. I'll probably make it, if I can remember, I'll probably try to make a video about why I know this. Like, this memory has been trying to be born in me for a long, like, into my consciousness for a long time. But I think it's the ECT that pushed it over the edge because, you know, I am very resistant. I'm not intentionally resistant, but when it comes to like, I don't know, getting to know parts, learning more about my history, things like that, I am unintentionally resistant because there are other parts of me that know the darkness is true and it's real and it's very scary and maybe we don't ever want to know it. But I feel also that this experience has lowered the resistance. And so as a result, I started doing more things for my child alters. I was basically not doing anything for them. And I know that sounds cruel, but you have to remember there's a dynamic going on. There's not just 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 alters. They're all affecting each other. And so I couldn't do things for my child alters. I wasn't ready. I tried, like I would buy toys, I would do stuff, I couldn't play with them. You know, things like that. I would have them around, but I couldn't touch them. And now I can play with them, okay? And so I've made this thing where when I get up in the morning, you know, after I like, you know, take my medicine, brush my teeth, get some water or whatever, the first thing I do is I let my children play. I color, I do clay, I make a puzzle, I do whatever, you know, just something they like to do. And I find that the rest of the day, I'm more free than I used to be to actually function. I would just, you know, I used to just be like on the couch all the time, just zoned out, like just like watching TV, too afraid to move because my parts were afraid to move. Some of them are still living in their old trauma. But now that I feel like I've broken some sort of barrier in communication through art with my children, and I feel like that's the key to like healing the whole thing, like just healing that's in my case. I get a vibe that if I can just heal the children, then we can heal upwards, you know, like it will just be like a domino effect. I could be wrong, you know, obviously this is just my feeling, okay? And we don't base science on feelings. But I just, you know, a lot has happened. I just missed you guys. I hope everybody out there is doing well. I hope you could get through this video. I missed you, I love you. See you later.